Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. Ukraine War News Update, third part for the 3rd of June 2024. Big thank you to Mark Bizq, as ever, for supporting. He gave me a super thanks in the live chat the other night and I missed it in the whole thing, and just big thanks. Dave Davis today, huge thank you to you. David L, I missed him the other night as well on a live stream, and everyone who supports the channel, all the members, thank you, legends in your own underwear. This is true. Okay, we're going to start with just a fairly basic one. So Lithuania extending agricultural sanctions against Belarus. These are neighbours of Belarus, sanctioning Belarus increasingly, which isolates Belarus, causes them economic harm, and then hopefully they change their ways. That would be nice. June the 3rd, a ban on the import of 2,800 items, including food, alcohol, tobacco, came into force. Transit of these goods through the territory of Lithuania is still allowed. The relevant law was adopted by the Lithuanians in April. Okay, moving on. So the Ukrainians in the Czech Republic who want to return to their homeland will be paid for the journey. The pilot project announced by the Ministry of the Interior for the Czech Republic will run from June to November and provides for payment for bus tickets, transport patients in ambulances for up to 30 patients. A total of 5.5 million Czech koruna has been allocated to the program. So refugees will be able to use the paid returns only once. This is, I guess, in terms of trying to attract people back out of Czech Republic or Czechia into Ukraine, to repatriate these refugees back into Ukraine as things have kind of got safer in the main for people outside of the war zones, but also possibly to try and say, hey, look, I know some of you are draft dodging. Maybe, here's a bit of an impetus to get yourselves back to Ukraine there. Now, Financial Times reports on a number... Okay, not Financial Times, Guardian, sorry. Reports on an election in South Africa, but this is a year of the most elections in the history of the world. So it is a very politically chaotic year. And there are a number of elections that have just taken place literally yesterday and over the last few days that will have relevance to Ukraine. One, South Africa is South Africa is a member of BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, as an accumulation of countries who would like, in principle, to create an alternative to the dollar as an international currency, as to provide an alternative hegemony to the US-based world order, as they see it. How successful that can be is open to debate. But the ANC have been a bit of a political force ever since sort of Mandela and those elections. Well, actually, ANC have actually sort of finally, not finally, as in I don't have a horse in this race, but have, after all this time, lost their majority. Still the biggest vote share, but 40% of the vote. So they will have to go into coalition. Democratic Alliance is this. They've now got a white leader there. That's interesting. Democratic Alliance didn't previously. So they are, I think they're centre-right, are gaining quite considerably. They're still a long way back from ANC, but I think there have been so many problems in South Africa with regard to energy, blackouts and whatnot, loads of issues with infrastructure throughout the country, and people complaining about, I guess, corruption and a lack of spending in the right places or spending efficiently and sensibly enough. And so that's going to come back and haunt the ANC, rightly so, because they are in charge at the time when things are going south. And interesting, because South Africa have been broadly in support of Russia. It's been a bit weird. There've been these possibly secret cargoes of South African military equipment going back to Russia, as a Russian naval vessel was doing scare quotes exercises in South African waters. Then it all went dark, and then in the middle of the night it got loaded up with some unknown stuff and then disappeared. You're like, wonder what happened there. And so that's South Africa. So interesting change, a political shift to some degree in South Africa. We'll keep an eye on that. And then in Mexico, not too connected to Ukraine, I guess, but Claudia Sheinbaum has won the presidential election in Mexico. She's the first female and first Jewish person to be elected to president of Mexico. Mexico's having some incredible problems, as it does no matter who's in charge, with drug cartels and safety, all sorts of issues there. In fact, I think a mayor candidate was shot dead the other day, a mayoral candidate. It's not easy to be a politician, I don't think, in Mexico, and to try and get things back on the right track when there is so much power in the hands of these cartels. And of course, you can argue, where does that start? Supply and demand. Where's the demand coming from? Predominantly the US. And so the US do have some responsibility, in a sense. With you can complain about the drug cartels south of the border, but if you're feeding the drug cartels with your demands for their drugs, then this is it's all connected, is what I'm trying to say. And I don't know enough about the American political connections with Mexico to know how much, like the DEA, or how much politically the US is involved with trying to get a handle on the drug cartels themselves, other than watching films on the subject. Right, Serbian President Vucic's party coalition wins elections in 85 of the country's 89 municipalities, so sweeping victories there. There is some pushback to this. There have been some protests over the last 6 months or so with regard to people who know exactly where Vucic is, where his sympathies lie. Feeling the safety of Putin's backing, says Kiev, all governments allied with Russia are now doing away with real elections. Serbia, total sham election is underway, but Vucic hasn't yet realised that, unlike Belarus, Venezuela and Syria, no Russians are coming to crack skulls. Well, yeah, but it happened in Serbia's Novi Sad. Hundreds have gathered in front of the city's fair to protest against massive electoral irregularities by the Vucic regime. In this building, the ruling party SNS operated an illegal call centre to pressure and bribe voters during today's local elections. I mean, you can imagine exactly what happened. Vucic gets in easily, and whilst pretty much rigging the election and using all of the techniques and mechanisms to his advantage that he can get his hands on as the ruling party. Hungary is undecided on peace summit participation due to Russia's absence. According to the foreign minister, Hungary has not decided whether to take part in Ukraine's global peace summit, as not all sides of the war will be present at the event. Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó said yesterday. And then Hungarian Foreign Minister said in an interview with the Belarusian state-owned all-national television that Hungary sees no point in going to the peace summit in Switzerland because Russia will not be represented there. They, quote, they tend to think that they too, Western and other Europeans, are at war with Russia. We don't feel that way. Russia has not attacked us. I'm all right, Jack. I can see an old woman get attacked by a thug over there. Oh, beating the crap out of her. Oh, well, he's not attacking me, so I see no point in doing anything here. Go for it. Yeah, keep going. I'm not going to step in. You keep... Yep. Oh, nice one to the face. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, carry on. You're not attacking me, so we're all fine here. Thank you very much. We don't feel that way, says Peter Szijjártó. Russia's not attacked us. We are not in a state of war. Well, lucky for you. Ukraine is not fighting for us. That's because you are on Russia's side. If we were attacked, it would be a different situation. But we... what's that thing? What's that thing called? What's that thing? Oh, that's it. NATO. Yeah, that alliance. That was it. NATO. Now, I know Ukraine aren't in NATO, but there is something to say about alliances here, or, even informal alliances with, decent entities, decent humans, like the old lady being beaten across the road. You can kind of ally with her by saying that she's being the victim here. And by not doing anything, I am de facto supporting the thug. But we've not been attacked, and neither have other European Union states. I'm all right, Jack. The NATO Secretary General has said very clearly that none of the alliance's allies are under military threat. So if we are not under military threat, why do we think this is our war, he said. Yeah, I won't rant anymore. Then get it done, says Glasnost on here. Belgium, current holder of the rotating council of the EU presidency, is taking an extraordinary step of urging EU governments to consider depriving pro-Russian Hungary, which takes over the presidency next month, that's going to be unfortunate, of voting rights. Wow. that's a really big move there. Be interested to see how that goes. Then on elections again, we've got French aid to Ukraine reporting that Jordan Bardella, head of the National Rally list in the EU elections. So the National Rally, Rassemblement National, is formerly the Front National, National Front, so very right wing. Under Marine Le Pen, previously under her father, they have been this kind of anti-EU, pro sort of Russia party. They've had to temper some of their extreme positions due to controversies. They've kind of disengaged with the AfD in Germany, but then the AfD in Germany are then getting sort of courted by these really, I mean, if you can get any further to the right than National Rally here, but like, yeah, it's all going to the right, really. So this guy is basically positioning himself and the National Rally against Macron, the centrist, and against support for Ukraine, effectively. He accuses Macron of, quote, preparing a European army and sharing French nuclear weapons. For him, these are two dangerous ambitions. Marine Le Pen's protege, so this guy is a protege of Marine Le Pen, who herself is a protege of her father, then suggested that voting for his party would not give Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the EU Commission, the power, quote, to send the sons of France to risk their lives in combat. Very clear positioning there of saying, if you support centrism and if you support these candidates, then you are supporting sending our young men to die in a war. Whether that is true or not, that's how they're going to sell this one. Of course, it's just completely in line with Russian propaganda as well. As French aid says, these people have completely lost the plot. Referring to BFM TV, BFM is quite pro. I'm not sure. Anyway, I will continue. We go to Georgia now. Protests have continued in Georgia, where the Speaker of the Parliament, Shalva Papuashvili, has signed the hated foreign agents law. President Salome Zurabishvili previously vetoed the bill, but the Constitution allowed the ruling pro-Russian Georgian Dream Party to vote it through. Today, a court hearing will be held in Moldova. So that's obviously happening there, protests going on. And then we pop across to Moldova, the other side of the Black Sea. Today, a court hearing will be held in Moldova over the head of the Gagauz autonomy, Eugenia Gutul, on a criminal case of illegal financing of the banned pro-Kremlin party SOR. Gutul supporters arrived in court building. Moldovan media reported that before the start of the hearing that there were two reports of an alleged bomb in a courthouse where Gutul's case would be heard. As it turned out, these reports were false, but this is another area of... she met with Putin recently, didn't she? This is this other area of... Moldova, rather similar to Transnistria, but that it hasn't been kind of formally annexed, or it hasn't had that Russian draw the line in the sand sort of situation that Transnistria has. So it is one where there is a lot of Russian involvement, and information warfare is going place, and influence activities as well on behalf of the Russians, or by the Russians. Kazakhstan, which is one of these nations that has sometimes edged themselves away from Russia and outside of their sphere of influence, and at other times says, we'll stick around with you, Russia. So here, Kazakhstan has removed Taliban from the list of terrorist organizations, quote, in order to develop economic interaction with Afghanistan. Kazakhstani President Kazim-Jomart Tokayev has said. Now, I don't know enough about the details here to wonder whether this could actually be a way of being able to help Afghanistan more and integrate with them and change them by osmosis and that whole kind of approach, or do you fully isolate Taliban, the Taliban and Afghanistan, and then, because there's such desperate economic destitution, that kind of extremism is the only hope of getting out of that mess, and that kind of radicalism, religious radicalism, that where you put all your hope in some kind of God figure, well, literally some kind of God, actually, a God. You put all your hope in there because you have no power to do anything else. This is why you often see, well, it's incredibly interesting if you look at the demographics of those who believe in God and those most warlike and insecure nations. And the nations like Afghanistan have the highest adherence to God belief because people are individually disenfranchised, and the only hope you've got of achieving anything is some abstract entity up there that gives you that hope. Because if you try and mobilize and get political traction, you get shot or put in prison forever. And yeah, it's desperate. And that's why when you look to the Nordic states, they have the lowest belief in God because everyone's empowered, and you have what I would call existential security, and that means that if you lose your job, the welfare state picks you up, and you're not going to lose your house, and so functionally you don't need a belief in God. I could bore you with psychology of religion and why there are these belief patterns around the world, but certainly the more war torn your nation is, the more likely you are to have a stronger belief in God, because it's functionally it helps. I say that as an atheist, as in like you are without hope and you are powerless. And when you're powerless, you kind of reaching out for anything to help you. And that's not to talk about the truth or falsity of the belief itself, but just to talk about the functional psychological beliefs. And so anyway, to get back to Kazakhstan. So Kazakhstan here are saying, we are going to take the Taliban off the list of terrorist organizations. But of course, that's what Russia's just done. And because Russia are not doing that for any kind of, I don't think, greater good, they are doing that for influence operations, and because they appear to be just wanting to go around the world and hoover up all the bad guys into their group. Their pack is Iran and North Korea and the Taliban. Whoop-de-woo. Right, then staying on elections, we're going to go to the UK elections. So we have Labour almost certainly going to get into power in some way, shape or form. There are various polls that are coming out that seem to have not shifted in favour. You would expect the polls to get closer and closer as the election looms ever nearer, and that the Tories would get back some of their lost voters as people go, oh, elections are closer. Okay, I'm not going to vote this other party. I am going to keep it safe. But actually, they haven't done that at the moment. And some of the polls are looking even worse. And there are so something like 78 Conservative politicians have they're resigning. They've seen they've read the tea leaves, and they're like, yeah, I'm not going to win. You're going to see a lot of big Conservative big hitters here, like Ian Duncan Smith, like cabinet members. You got the Somersets, Eatonites, Jacob Rees-Mogg, who is going to probably lose his seat. Anyway, point is it could be a mauling, and then if it is, or even if it isn't, you're likely to get a Labour government. What are Labour doing, first of all, in the run-up to the elections, in who they're putting in place to be candidates in these different constituencies that are looking like they are able to challenge and gain that seat from the Conservatives? And what Labour have been doing is moving further and further to the right. So at the moment, Labour are actively getting rid of their left-wing extremes. So Jeremy Corbyn, Diane Abbott, they're trying to get rid of all these big hitters for the left wing, and they are very clearly saying to the electorate, we are going to adopt the centre ground, like super clearly. This is like 1997 over again and Tony Blair. So they have given up any attempt to pretend to be this kind of to adopt that normal left-wing ground. So if you're worried about a left-wing government getting in for some reason, the new label, this changed Labour, is not going to be that. It is going to be an avowedly centrist party, and as such they are taking on some really centrist policies and giving up some of their more left-wing policies, and they are taking on people. So Natalie Elphicke from Dover as a she defected from the Conservatives, and she's like proper anti-immigration. Dover is where a lot of the migrants come in across the channel. She's avowedly like anti-immigration, like the sort of conservative you would never normally see join Labour. And that she joined Labour, she's not going to run again in the next election, so it's only kind of for kind of show, I guess. But they took her on board, and she's quite a divisive figure. But it also shows you where Labour are sitting, politically speaking. Now, on to why this is relevant to Ukraine. So Keir Starmer is set to unveil 14 former military personnel as Labour candidates for the UK general election. So you can see what he's trying to do here. He's like, we are serious on security, we are serious on foreign policy, and I'm going to show you that because I'm going to have 14 candidates running in these different constituencies who are former military personnel. He's tried to persuade voters that Britain's main opposition party, Labour, can be trusted with the country's defence. So very often the Conservatives are seen as the one serious on defence. Labour are more for your welfare state and left-wing stuff, but he's changing or trying to change that. The ex-military candidates set to be announced by Labour include Alistair Cairns, a former Royal Marines colonel, Louise Jones, a former Army intelligence officer, and Calvin Bailey, a former RAF commanding officer. You would think unlikely Labour candidates. So they appear to be trying to show themselves to be strong on defence. We're yet to see whether they do anything markedly different on Ukraine. At the very least, it will be more of the same, which is good, but they could go even further and announce, bigger things. I don't think they'd go the other way and do less for Ukraine. Right, Mark Hartling here. Now going across to America, there were lots of interesting exchanges during this Scarecrow's interview. 3 people obsequiously allowing Donald Trump to say what he likes and not massively challenging him. If he said any of the stuff I've heard him say in this interview, I'd be jumping down his throat and saying, what? You need to justify that, my son. Anyway, this Fox News interview is typically softball. I find this to be one of the many extremely troubling ones. Okay, what's he say here, and how does it pertain to Ukraine?
Are you going to fire those generals, the woke generals at the top? Because you've been talking about it.
Yes, I would get rid of them. Yeah, but see, now I know them.
And by the way, just a lesson in how not to be a journalist and how to be a shit interviewer. Right, this is it. Are you going to do anything about those woke generals? Leading question, anyone? Are we assuming that they are woke? You're not just going to let Trump say that. You're just with Trump here. So of course the US has got all these woke generals in place.
Are you going to fire those generals, the woke generals at the top? Because you've been talking about it.
Yes, I would get rid of them. Yeah, but see, now I know them. I didn't know them before. I came in. What do I know? I was a New York real estate person, but no, I'd fire them. I would fire them. You can't have woke military.
Are you going to fire?
So he's just going to fire all the woke military. There you go. Just replace them with, I guess, Mike Flynn and people like that. Now, this though to me is the most worrying. And I have to say, if you support this guy, we're going to disagree. This is freaking scary.
The local police are great. They're just not allowed to do their job. They're afraid of losing their pension.
So I'm going to start again a bit louder.
The local police are great. They're just not allowed to do their job. They're afraid of losing their pension. They're afraid of losing their wife or husband. They're going to lose their house. They're losing everything. And one of the things I'm doing is giving local police immunity from prosecution. They get prosecuted. When they do their job, they get like your soldiers. When they do their job, the local police are great.
So he's going to make police like soldiers, immune from prosecution, it's like war, basically. And do we want to go and look at pictures of the Georgian people getting the crap kicked out of them? Do we want to go and look at Russia and the internal security services there? He is advocating that police are immune from prosecution, so police can do what the hell they like. No accountability. If you want an indication of how authoritarian this guy really is, there you go. If you're cool with that, me and you are going to have some disagreements. If you are cool with what Trump has just said about the US internal security forces, if you like, if you're cool with that, that is a huge worry. And it's this move towards authoritarianism. He's going to sack the generals. What does this mean for his positioning on Ukraine, all that expertise will be out the window. He'll bring in all his Mike Flynns, who are, let's face it, anti-Ukraine and pro-Russia, and this is it will just be a nightmare. Now, staying on America, I mentioned this yesterday, but George Clooney putting together a well-financed team to go after Putin's propaganda minions. I only mention this again because, of course, this morning I talked about the Grey Zone, which is a Washington-based or a US-based effectively disinformation media site on behalf of Russian propagandists. Well, I don't know how his lawyers are going to work this, and obviously he's married to a human rights lawyer. But again, this goes back to what I was saying with sort of Buffett and Soros and Gates, is when you get enough money, he's not a billionaire, but you get enough money, you want to start doing things that are good for the world, or in his case, I think good for the country, so that the country isn't being overrun by pro-Russian narratives that are propagated by mouthpieces and agents of Russia. Moving across to the Black Sea from the US, stolen wheat from occupied Crimea, Russian state-owned United Shipbuilding's Astrakhan-based subsidiary Crane Marine contractors Russian flag bulker, that's a long sentence, Matros Koshka, I haven't even finished, transited the Bosphorus Straits en route to occupied Sevastopol after delivering stolen Ukrainian wheat to Tartus in Syria. This is still going on. How do we stop these ghost fleets operating and allowing grain to be stolen from Ukraine and shipped off to these other countries? Right, China believes all efforts should be recognised in supporting peace measures around the Russia-Ukrainian war. China has never, quote, fanned fire or fueled the flames, a spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry said, according to Reuters. This is in response to I presume, Zelensky accusing China of trying to convince people not to go to, like Saudi Arabia, not to go to the peace summit in Switzerland on the 13th to 15th of June. Zelensky, as it says, Zelensky has accused Russia and China of attempting to undermine his planned global peace summit. Russia and China proclaimed a no-limits relationship just days before Moscow launched its invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, but Beijing has so far avoided providing actual weapons and ammunition for Russia's war effort, although they've done pretty much everything but. And then the Financial Times reports that China demands that Russia sells its gas to China at, quote, domestic prices. Russia's attempts to strike a major gas pipeline deal with China have stalled. Quote, China has asked for a price close to heavily subsidized Russian domestic prices and is committed to buying only a small fraction of the pipeline's planned annual capacity, the article says. Of course, China are in a commanding position. They are the power player here. Russia is desperate to sell their hydrocarbons to anyone they can in the quantities that they need to keep the production cycles going. They can't, things like gas, it's very difficult to stop it. They ended up burning lots of gas as it was coming out because they couldn't sell it, they couldn't ship it on the pipelines because Nord Stream being closed down, etc., etc. So they're trying to get these pipelines going elsewhere, but that takes years and years to sort out. They need China to take huge amounts of gas off their hands. China know that Russia are desperate and they're like, yeah, we'll do that at this price. Do you know what you're going to do if you don't sell it to us? Bugger all, mate, because you can't sell it to anyone else. So we'll buy it, and as I said, at this price. Oh, you don't want that? Russia. Come back to us when you're ready. China can do that. Like, China are in such a commanding position. This is why people within Russia have been worried for many years that Russia will become a vassal state of China. Well, here it is. Here it's happening. And there ain't an awful lot that Putin can do about this. So they will end up, no doubt, selling their hydrocarbons to China at the rate that China demands. Last thing I'm going to talk about today, Kiev Post published a recording in which it's claimed that fighters of the GUR, so this is kind of Ukrainian intelligence, the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, together with Syrian rebels, are attacking and destroying soldiers of the Russian armed forces in Syria. So not only do we see the Ukrainians active in Sudan fighting the Russians, but active in Syria fighting the Russians. Active hostilities are taking place in the southern part of the country, including the Syrian part of the Golan Heights, where Russian troops are concentrated. The video was dated March 2024. Now, of course, might not be true, pinch of salt, all that, but it wouldn't surprise me, and you might wonder what the hell are Ukraine doing wasting their troops fighting in these foreign places. But of course, these places enable Russia to prosecute their war in Ukraine. Like in Sudan and in Africa, it's all about securing gold and diamonds and whatever else they are getting out of there. And Syria, it's going to be probably hydrocarbons or influence in general, and their ability to use their ports in on the Mediterranean, so on and so forth. And Ukraine realized that Russia have these areas where they have serious amounts of influence and power, and Ukraine is trying to disabuse them of that power in any way they can. And in this case, in Syria, they are using their own armed forces to do so. Interesting. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Hopefully that was at least of some interest and use to you. Take care, and I'll speak to you, no doubt, fairly soon.